Okay, let's unpack this. Today on the Deep Dive, we're plunging headfirst into a legal saga that has commanded significant public attention. The federal case of the U.S. versus Sean Combs.
Right, quite the saga.
Yeah, and our mission, as always, is to distill the most important nuggets of knowledge from the sources you've provided. Think of this as your shortcut, to being well-informed about the complex, evolving developments.
And trying to make sense of it all.
Exactly. Providing crucial facts, context, and raising some thought-provoking questions along the way.
And importantly, before we dive deeper, it's really vital to acknowledge that this federal case is still very much ongoing. All the individuals mentioned, well, they're presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law.
Absolutely a crucial point.
And, given the intensely sensitive nature of the information we'll be discussing today, if you're easily triggered, please be advised about the content of this conversation. It gets into some heavy details.
Yes, definitely be advised. So, to set the stage, our focus today is specifically on the developments from Week 6, Day 25 of the trial.
Okay, Day 25.
Yeah, this was a day where prosecutors continued to bring forward new witnesses and evidence, and the defense was really fighting back with a powerful counter-narrative. It was, to say the least, a dynamic day in the courtroom.
Sounds like it. Things are heating up.
They really are. Day 25 kicked off with immediate high-stakes drama right in the morning. Judge Arun Subramanian delivered a stern, maybe even fiery reprimand to both defense attorneys and prosecutors.
Oh, wow. What prompted that?
Well, this wasn't just a general reminder. It was a forceful assertion of judicial authority.
The reason for this serious reprimand was a significant breach of protocol. An article had apparently been published that revealed details of a sealed proceeding.
A sealed proceeding from the previous Friday.
Exactly. And when lawyers from both sides claimed they had no knowledge of who leaked the information, the judge's response was pretty stark and unambiguous. He stated very directly, well, someone is lying.
Oof, it's blunt.
Yeah, it really highlights the extreme scrutiny and the sensitivity surrounding this trial.
And his response went beyond just words. He threatened severe punishment. We're talking criminal contempt or sanctions, device seizure, even compelling individuals to testify under oath if any further violations occurred.
Serious consequences, then.
Very serious. It's a dramatic moment, underscoring how fiercely the legal system seeks to control the flow of information in such a high-profile case.
Definitely.
It was also noted that defense attorney Mark Nifolo stated he learned of the article only when the government itself sent it to the defense team.
Interesting detail. But that level of judicial control really underscores the gravity here, doesn't it? It suggests a strong concern about maybe external influence or perhaps witness intimidation.
That's what I was thinking.
It absolutely does. I mean, that kind of threat from the bench is rare, and it signals that the judge views this as a direct challenge to the integrity of the court.
Right.
It's about maintaining decorum, sure, but maybe more importantly, it's about protecting the trial process from outside interference that could prejudice a jury or, intimidate potential witnesses. The stakes are incredibly high.
Clearly. And the judge is sending a message. No more breaches.
Zero tolerance.
And this intense atmosphere, it carried over from a key fallout on Day 24, the dismissal of juror number 6.
Yes, the juror dismissal.
Diddy's legal team pushed back hard against his removal, arguing against it and raising concerns about potential racial bias, especially given that he was one of only 2 black male jurors.
A significant point for the defense.
So what was the judge's ultimate decision there, and what other sort of unsettling details emerged around this?
Well, the judge ultimately disagreed with the defense's arguments about bias and proceeded to replace the juror with a white male alternate. The court's reasoning was apparently based on other factors, not the racial bias argument specifically.
Oh.
But to add another layer of complexity, maybe even strangeness to this situation, a separate juror reportedly received a suspicious text message.
A text message, what did it say?
It specifically asked if he was juror number 6.
Whoa, that's concerning.
Very. The judge stated he would investigate this incident, which certainly amplifies concerns about potential tampering or, external attempts to influence the trial. It makes you wonder how much pressure these jurors are under.
Absolutely. That's a truly unsettling detail. So, moving from the courtroom's strict rules and these procedural dramas, the focus then shifted squarely to the evidence itself.
Right, back to the testimony.
And some truly compelling testimony started unfolding. What was the first major piece of testimony to follow that morning, and how did it kind of set the tone?
After the judicial warnings, the day continued with significant witness testimony. The first person up was Brendan Paul.
Brendan Paul. Who's he described as?
He was described in our sources as an individual involved in the transport of illegal substances.
Okay. And what happened when he was called?
When called to the stand, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right.
The right not to self-incriminate.
Exactly, his constitutional right. So he initially refused to testify.
Okay, so he refused. What happened then? How did the trial move forward?
Well, precisely because his testimony was deemed crucial by the prosecution, an immunity order was entered.
Immunity, so that means...
It means he was compelled to testify, but in exchange, the information he provides on the stand cannot be used against him in a future criminal prosecution.
Okay. But it could be used if he lied, right? Like perjury.
Correct. Perjury is still on the table. But it's a common legal tool, to get crucial testimony when a witness has self-incrimination concerns. It allows the trial to proceed while protecting their rights. Sort of.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so after Paul, then we had Special Agent Alicia Pinland resume her testimony for the prosecution.
Right. Agent Pinland back on the stand.
And this is where a significant amount of detailed financial evidence was presented. Her role, as we heard before, is to summarize factual data from hundreds of documents, flights, texts, hotel records, payments, everything.
Just the facts.
Exactly. It's important to remember she was restricted to presenting factual data and specifically not allowed to draw conclusions for the jury. So what specific threads did she pull on to weave the prosecution's financial narrative?
Well, Agent Pinland really walked the jury through an intricate financial trail. She presented American Express and hotel records meticulously tied not just to Sean Combs, but also to Cassie Ventura, Jules Theodore, and others.
Okay, so connecting the dots financially.
Yeah, we heard about specific examples. A London hotel stay, a Virgin American or maybe American Airlines plane ticket for Jules Theodore, and a Four Seasons hotel booking for Clayton Howard, who also goes by the name Dave.
These seem like routine travel details on the surface, maybe.
They do, but they become far more significant when you consider they also showed travel invoices from Bad Boy Entertainment paid by Sean Combs' American Express card.
The corporate link.
Right. And crucially, there were charges for property damage. A $500 charge for damage to drapes. Okay. But then a true...
Wow. Nearly $47,000. That's substantial.
Very. And both these damage charges were paid via corporate accounts at Signature Bank. There was even another hotel charge in Riverhead, Long Island, which was linked to the Hamptons.
So these seemingly small charges, especially the big one for damages, they become crucial because they tie specific alleged incidents directly to Combs' corporate accounts, right? Painting a picture of financial control over these alleged activities.
Exactly right. The prosecution's implied narrative here, by presenting this meticulous financial tracing, is to demonstrate how Sean Combs allegedly arranged and funded these explicit performance parties and related activities using his staff and corporate accounts.
Trying to show a system.
Precisely. This financial data attempts to show a pattern of organized misconduct, turning routine business transactions into threads of a much larger web, which is really central to their case, especially for the RICU aspect.
Okay, so then the testimony really honed in on the timeline of that March 2016 Intercontinental Hotel altercation. How did that unfold?
It started subtly, actually, with Cassie Ventura inquiring about another individual's availability on March 4th. Then, on March 5th, things escalated quickly.
What happened on the 5th?
Sean Combs made 8 consecutive unanswered calls to Ventura around 11:28 a.m.
8 calls in a row, unanswered.
Okay. Then the jury was shown some pretty striking visual evidence photos of Ventura. She had a swollen lip, wearing sunglasses, and the photos were apparently taken just minutes later at 11:35 a.m. in the car after leaving the hotel.
So, visual evidence of injury presented. And the text exchanges.
They were described as equally intense. Ventura texted something like, "You are sick to think it's okay to do what you have done. Please stay far away from me."
Strong words.
And Combs' responses were described as desperate. "Call me help. Help me, I'm about to be arrested." And then chillingly, "If you don't pick up, you'll never hear my voice again."
Wow. That paints a vivid and, frankly, concerning picture.
It truly does. The records also detail the involvement of others, like Drock Butler, who was Combs' security guard, and Christina Courtroom.
What was their involvement?
Well, Drock, for instance, texted Ventura to tell Combs to get out of there before they arrest him, which seems to imply some knowledge of potential legal trouble.
Right. Suggests awareness.
Additionally, an LAPD detective's business card was found, along with records of calls involving Eddie Garcia, a former Intercontinental security guard.
Eddie Garcia? Wasn't he the one who testified earlier?
That's the connection. This detail is particularly significant because, yes, Garcia previously testified that he met Combs to exchange video footage for $100,000.
$100,000 for video footage.
That was his testimony, and he said he signed a non-disclosure agreement with Courtroom taking a photo of his license during that exchange.
So this raises an important question, right?
Yeah.
About the handling and maybe alleged suppression of evidence, suggesting an effort to control the narrative.
That seems to be the implication the prosecution wants the jury to draw, yes. Potential evidence tampering or suppression.
And Ventura's emotional state after this alleged altercation. Were there texts about that?
Yes, those were presented too. Messages like, "This was supposed to be a big day for me. Now I wish I could stay in bed," apparently sent around March 5th or 7th. And later, a text to someone named Morgan saying, "I should have sued Laugh Out Loud." Totally.
And what about the jury's reaction when those explicit videos were shown?
Yeah, that stood out. The report mentioned specific reactions. One juror apparently covered her eyes, another one winced, and then, interestingly, another one kind of chuckled.
A chuckle. That's an odd reaction.
It is. It indicates a very visceral and perhaps varied reaction from the jury to the nature of that evidence being shown for the first time.
Okay, so after this extensive presentation from the prosecution, laying out financials, timelines, texts, injuries, what does this all mean for the defense's strategy? How do they respond?
Well, the defense, through attorney Tiny Jaros, launched a pretty strong counter-narrative during Agent Pinlin's cross-examination. They tried to reshape how the jury perceives all this evidence.
How do they approach that?
Their approach was to highlight that Agent Pinlin's summary charts, the ones laying out who was where and when, only included the evidence she had access to and was presenting. Meaning, not necessarily every single person who might have been present at various events was listed. This kind of sets up the idea that the prosecution's narrative, while detailed, might be incomplete or not the full picture.
A classic defense tactic. Raise doubt about the completeness of the story.
Exactly. If you can't fully refute the evidence, argue it's presented out of context or that crucial parts are missing.
And the core of their strategy seemed to be presenting Cassie Ventura's own explicit messages. What was the aim there?
The aim was clearly to show her alleged free will and perhaps even initiation of explicit interactions to counter the victim narrative.
Can you walk us through some of the examples they put forward?
Certainly. They presented messages dating back quite a way, to 2009 even. For instance, when Combs apparently asked, "When do you want to freak off?" Ventura allegedly replied, "I'm always ready to freak out."
Freak off and freak out. Okay. Other examples.
Other texts included things like, "I'm so horny I can't concentrate. I'm going to Dwayne Reed pack us a bag," suggesting preparation for these encounters.
Right, suggesting initiative.
And another message saying, "I brought the best explicit outfits for later and shoes," adding, "I promise I will be the nastier freaky bee to make up for it."
Okay, using the specific term "bee" there in the quote, that's quite a contrast to the prosecution's narrative.
A stark contrast. There were also discussions shown about planning logistics for these explicit interactions and even asking about an orange substance referred to as astro or an orange pill.
So the defense is really trying to show active participation, planning, maybe even enthusiasm on Ventura's part. What other types of messages did they present?
Well, they also presented affectionate messages from Ventura to Combs, things like, "I love you so much, you make me a better woman, daughter, sister," and thanking him for showing her love and happiness the way it's supposed to be.
That directly contradicts the image of someone purely victimized or controlled.
It does. And in one particularly telling exchange that was highlighted, Ventura apparently texted, "I hated that I don't use protection when I get high. I'm gonna get tested." Combs responded, "Let's explicitly interact now," to which Ventura replied, "Okay, well, hotel."
Implying a continuous and at times maybe mutual engagement in these specific activities, even with concerns mixed in.
That seems to be the picture the defense wants to paint, yes.
This stark narrative contrast is truly striking. So the prosecution portrays Combs as this abusive, controlling power figure.
Right, using his resources and staff.
While the defense argues these were toxic, sure, but ultimately consensual relationships. They seem to imply Ventura was perhaps desperate to be close to him and maybe bitter over the fact that he saw other women.
Exactly. The defense is really betting on blurring those lines for the jury, the line between a very complicated, perhaps unhealthy personal relationship and the specific legal definitions of organized crime or coercion under a co.
It's a fundamental clash in how the entire relationship in these events are framed. Did the defense present any other evidence during this cross?
They did. They also showed more explicit videos, these ones apparently from Ventura's own devices, found under a profile named Frank Black. Some dated back to 2012 and 2014.
And this ties into.
Well, Ventura herself had previously testified about being with Dave or Jules during some of these explicit interactions. So the defense is trying to reinforce their point. She had free will, she initiated explicit encounters and conversations sometimes, she actively participated in planning these interactions.
All aiming to challenge that core prosecution narrative of organized misconduct and coercion.
Precisely. If they can convince the jury she was a willing, active participant, it could significantly undermine the ICAIA charges, which require a pattern of criminal activity directed by a leader.
Makes sense. And what about the prosecution's final move for the day? Was there any brief redirect after this defense onslaught?
Yes, there was a brief redirect examination of Agent Pinland. She confirmed that Combs, Ventura, and Clayton Howard were all present at that Riverhead hotel, linking them physically to another location mentioned earlier.
Okay, reinforcing the connections.
And perhaps most powerfully, the prosecution ended their questioning of her for the day by presenting a photo. It was a photo of Ventura showing wounds above her eye.
Wounds above her eye.
Yes. And she had apparently texted this photo to Combs with the caption, "So you can remember."
Wow. Bringing it right back to the alleged physical altercations and trying to tie the emotional messages and relationship dynamics to concrete injury.
Exactly. A powerful image to leave the jury with before the day ended.
So with all this evidence presented, both sides laying out these dramatically different narratives, what does this all mean for the trial's overall trajectory? Where do things stand strategically?
Well, zooming out, if you look at the factual presentation, the prosecution currently appears to hold a stronger position, maybe.
Why do you say that?
They've presented what seems like a pattern of alleged organized misconduct, and it's supported by a really wide array of evidence. Testimony from multiple individuals, those meticulous financial records, text messages, audio recordings, and those graphic videos we discussed.
And they're framing it all under ICO, right?
Exactly. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. This is a powerful legal tool, usually for organized crime, because it connects a series of alleged individual acts into a broader, coordinated criminal enterprise.
So they're alleging a coordinated operation involving staff to arrange explicit gatherings, transport people, funded corporately.
That's the narrative, that it wasn't just personal behavior, but an organized system.
On the other hand, the defense is saying, no, these were just toxic but ultimately consensual relationships.
Right. Their whole strategy is to challenge the credibility of the witnesses, highlight inconsistencies in their stories, and really emphasize those affectionate texts from Ventura, the financial exchanges, trying to reframe the whole case.
They want the jury to see this as complicated personal drama, maybe messy relationships, rather than organized crime, hoping to sow enough doubt to undermine those serious IACO charges.
It's a high-stakes gamble, absolutely.
So where does that leave the balance right now?
It feels like unless the defense can really effectively dismantle the prosecution's pattern of alleged organized misconduct specifically, challenging that idea of a coordinated criminal enterprise, the government probably holds a significant advantage at this moment.
And the prosecution is wrapping up soon.
They've indicated they expect to rest their case very soon, possibly even tomorrow, as you mentioned. So we are rapidly approaching a really pivotal moment in this trial. The defense will soon have their chance to present their full case.
This deep dive really reveals a trial just brimming with complex accusations and this profound clash of narratives. It's fascinating in a way.
It is. On one side, you have this meticulous presentation of alleged organized misconduct and control, trying to show a systemic pattern.
And on the other, this determined attempt to reframe everything as consensual, albeit deeply complicated personal relationships. It's a lot to process.
And this raises an important question, I think, for you, for anyone following this. In a high-stakes legal battle like this, filled with such deeply personal, often disturbing details, how do we, as informed listeners, weigh such contrasting evidence?
Yeah, how do you parse that?
How do you ultimately understand the complex interplay between these intensely personal relationships and the alleged legal culpability? The line between the two can be incredibly blurry sometimes.
And that blurry line is exactly what both sides are battling over in that courtroom.
Precisely.
It's just a stark reminder of how multifaceted truth can appear when viewed through different lenses, especially within the confines of a legal system.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Sean Combs trial.
Glad we could unpack some of it.
We hope this has given you a clearer, more informed perspective and maybe Something to chew on until our next conversation.